right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horsemen Pro Football Talk podcast. I am Brad.
And I'm Hefe.
And we are missing the third horseman. A little incomplete, so like 2/3 of the horsemen. It'll just be Hefe and I working this out for you today. We got a week one recap this week, and what a crazy week this was.
Yeah, it was a wild weekend. A lot of really unexpected things happened. I think a lot of what you saw is teams that didn't change much. Like we didn't have a whole lot of expectations for the Packers, especially the Packers offense, and they exploded. So it seemed like the teams that had a lot of the same pieces come back were the teams that came out firing here in week one. It's like you could really see the effect of no OTAs, an unusual training camp, no preseason. Some of the teams it really had a strong effect on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's start with Thursday. Let's go with the Chiefs. All right, Super Bowl champs. A lot of people in the AFC were looking forward to this matchup. I say a lot of people, and a few people in a certain zip code in Texas. I think everybody else knew what this was going to be, and it didn't disappoint. The Chiefs, as a matter of fact, as I watched the game, the Chiefs may be better than I thought they were going to be this year, which is that's saying something.
Yeah, especially as good as they were last year. Damian Williams, the running back that they used last year, was still mostly just a threat out of the backfield in the passing game. Whereas now they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who looked like he could carry the offense. They had one drive in that game that lasted just over 9 minutes. It was 16 plays, and they let the rookie running back just carry him down that drive. Patrick Mahomes obviously converting third downs when he needed to also. They looked outrageously impressive. They had a good draft pick, their fourth-round rookie cornerback. He played exceptionally well too, so the talent that they brought in this year is already producing for them and had a big impact here in week one.
Yeah, how many yards did Edwards-Helaire have?
He had 25 carries for 138 yards and one touchdown.
Not bad for your first game, but it also not bad not only for your first game, but after not having a preseason and not really having a camp. I mean, that's going to be the recurring theme of the discussion today. But now, on the flip side of that, it's kind of hard to screw it up. Obviously, the kid's got talent. I don't mean to take, but it's kind of hard to screw it up going into this system because it is an unbelievable, well-oiled machine. But let's talk about Mahomes for a second. Mahomes may be the first quarterback to really live up the hype since we've seen a Manning come into the league.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably accurate.
What he's done is remarkable. What it looks like he's going to continue to do is there a word better than remarkable? I mean, I'm really excited. I'm not a Chiefs fan. I mean, I'm a Colts fan. I'm a Buccaneers fan. I'm a Dolphins fan. But I'm really excited to watch this kid this year, and I don't care if they win another Super Bowl. I want to be a part of watching the magic happen if they're going to be as good as I think they might be.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking too. As tough as that is, especially with the Chiefs and the AFC and us being Colts fans, it would suck for the Colts not to win a Super Bowl. But if the Colts aren't winning the Super Bowl, then I would rather it be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. He's just so likable, and he's got the talent to back it up. They've got a great roster around him, great coaching. Andy Reid signed an extension, so he's going to be there for a little while. It's a really exciting team, and like I said, if it's not the Colts, then it might as well be the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. And you can't help but like Andy Reid. And from a coach, coaches always have a vision, and the entire process is building that long-term vision. And it looks like Andy Reid has achieved the pinnacle of what he wanted to accomplish. I mean, he's got it all there in a system that looks like it's going to carry him through 3 years. I mean, so you have teams pop up every once in a while that out of nowhere the cohesion is there. Everyone comes together. They peak at the right time. A little bit of luck, couple calls go your way. Whatever the case may be, and so you'll have a team just pop up out of nowhere and then disappear back into oblivion. It looks like the Chiefs are here to stay, and we've got at least a small dynasty on our hand over the next 5 years, if not longer. If not, we looking at a Patriots type thing. I don't know that it'll last 20 years like the Patriots did, but there's something special going on. So we're really excited to watch that happen. On the flip side, the Texans. I want to come to the defense of the Texans a little bit. I mean, and I'm going to do this a couple times today. We've really bust the Texans balls. I mean, their fans. We're in a group where there's a lot of trash talking. And I am not high on the Texans. I think that they're a potential playoff team. They could win the division if things go their way. There's a lot of uncertainty in the division with the three teams, the Texans, the Titans, and the Colts. We saw some of that yesterday with the Colts. But I'm going to defend the Texans a little bit. I mean, they struggled, right? But they struggled against perhaps the most dominant team in the NFL. They may go 0-3. They might go 0-4. We start out with the Chiefs, and they have the Steelers, or they have the Ravens, then the Steelers, then the Vikings, and then the Jags. Which the Jags are the wild card in this whole mess, which we're going to talk about in a second. So they could start out 0-3 to 0-5. I don't think 0-5 is going to happen. I think they're going to pick up a couple wins in there, but they're a good team. They are a good team. They're going to get it together. They're going to have a much easier second half of the schedule. Much easier second half of their schedule. They're a team. We talked about that yesterday. They're a team that could rattle off, win 7 out of their last 10, that kind of thing, and have all this hype headed into the playoffs. They could win the division. I don't think it's going to happen, but they are capable of winning the division. They could also end up in the playoffs. So it's week 1. You just walked into Kansas City and played the Super Bowl champions, who we just talked about looked better than they did last year, if that's possible. We can't write the Texans off. Right? We need to give their fans some hope. I mean, it's a long season. They got a long way to go, and they're going to be competitive.
Yeah, and I think what they can hang their hat on is that it's pretty well known. Pretty much every team comes into games with scripted plays. However many that is, 10 to 25. How it varies. But I would assume that first drive where the Texans just move right down the field on that defense, those were the scripted plays, the plays everybody knows. So it looked like, with all those new weapons, it's just a matter of their learning curve and being able to get up to speed with everything in the playbook. And as they learn more and open up the playbook more, maybe it frees up more and looks more like the offense that started that game than the offense that finished that game. So like you said, it was tough to play the defending champs. That offense is explosive. Where I think the Texans are gonna keep being hurt unless they make some kind of transaction is in their secondary. I think they're going to keep getting exposed week after week. Obviously depending on who they play, but they have some holes in the secondary. It's not the way it was a couple of years ago there in Houston, and so that's why I have them having a losing record this season. But certainly playing the Chiefs is not going to help that situation. So, like you said, it's not really fair to judge them just off this game.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that takes us to the heartbreaker. I said yesterday. I think you heard me say. It's been a long time. I don't even remember when the last time that I had such a high expectation for the Colts to win. I never imagined I would see what I saw yesterday. So we need to unpack it a little bit. First, I want to talk about the Jags. All right, in all seriousness, I don't want to beat the Jags down. The Jags they played hard yesterday. Minshew played hard. He played well. Continued at least for another week to live up to the hype that we're hearing out of Jacksonville about this kid. The Colts made some mistakes. There's an argument there that the Colts, that they were in control and they lost the game based on the mistakes. But there's another argument on the other side of the ball that the Jags played hard and forced mistakes to happen, and that's certainly something that the Jags fans can claim, and rightfully so, and I'll give that to them. There's no excuses coming out of here, but it's still, and we're going to talk about this with the Colts and every other team we talk about today. It's still game one in a jacked up preseason interconference game, which all bets go out the window in an interconference game. We saw that in the first half of the Browns Ravens game yesterday. It's hardly a predictor of what's to come. The and when it all shakes out, the Jags are still sub 500. They're probably going to finish at the bottom of the South, bar something obscure happening with those other three teams, which still it remains to be seen. I don't expect them, as much as I hate to say this. I would love them to beat the Titans. I don't see it happening. I think it was a fluke. All conditions were ripe, and I don't see the Jags winning two in a row.
No, and I don't want to be, a Colts fan that's giving excuses and whatnot, but the Mack injury, it came out just about an hour and a half ago that Marlon Mack has a torn Achilles, and he went out pretty early. Now, up until that point, we were moving. They couldn't stop us. They stopped us on that fourth and one inside the 20, and that's a problem. We're gonna have to do something about those because we missed two fourth downs. But when Mack left the game, and we had Naheem Hines, who is traditionally our number two back, and Jonathan Taylor, the rookie, who didn't have a preseason in this offense. I think the playbook was more limited, and Philip Rivers, he might know the scheme, but he's got to get reacquainted with all the new plays in this playbook again. So I think it was just kind of a perfect storm of conditions. They had to slim down the playbook even more when Mac went out, and it seemed to cause problems. They couldn't move the ball there in the second half, and when it came crunch time, Philip Rivers did the most Philip Rivers thing he could do, and he threw another interception.
Which we talked about that as well. That is what Philip Rivers does. It's exactly what Brett Favre did. It's what gunslingers do, is they throw their way out of it. And I know there's a lot of debate about Rivers and the interceptions he threw in San Diego, and we talked a lot about that. Um, this is a different set of circumstances. So if you want to play that game and we want to look at Philip Rivers, is his old form in the Chargers? Yeah, he's still the Chargers quarterback because he still hasn't had time to integrate into this system. Again, jacked up preseason, no preseason games, limited camp, new guys coming in. Taylor's out of college. It is a perfect storm. There's a whole lot to be said about what happened yesterday. So um, I don't. I like it. I like it that Rivers threw interceptions because Rivers is trying to make plays, and when things mellow out, things get ironed out. He's comfortable in the system. He understands his teammates. His teammates understand him. I I'm betting that that will level itself out. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit I'm wrong. We'll have that conversation then. But I think Rivers is smart enough when it gets to where he doesn't have to make those plays, he's not going to force the issue as much as he normally does.
Yeah, and he in his post game press conference yesterday, he was pretty. He said it probably 3 4 times about a play that led to that fourth and one where we got stopped inside the 20. There was a second down. It was a 2nd and 7, and he threw 5 yards to Paris Campbell for and made it 3rd and 2, and so on and so forth. But when they got back to the sideline, Nick Sirianni sat down with him and showed him Jack Doyle's wide open. We could have made a 14-0 right here. So to me that showed that he's still in the growing pains. And as fortunate as we just lost to Jack, I've honestly the feeling after they lost that game, I've never been as embarrassed as a Colts fan as I was when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's growing pains. But I think for as confident as this team was with all the new pieces and as much talent as is there, they just got smacked in the mouth. And going forward, I think that's going to push them to do great things.
I agree. I agree. I talk about a travel basketball team that I coached many years ago. That we were 32-3 over 2 years, and those three losses all came right before the state tournament, and we were back-to-back state champions. It would have never happened had we not lost those three games. And a good coach will certainly turn that around and use that as motivation. And we not only have Wright, but we have Rivers that will do the same. So I still think they're a top 5 AFC team easy. Uh, so,
But I do. I mean, we usually shit on the Jags a lot, but they had that rookie Henderson, and I don't know much about that guy, but for a rookie coming in on such a strange offseason, he probably had one of the best rookie corner games, if not the best game for a corner to start his career ever. He played an amazing. He locked up Ty for a lot of the game. He could cover pairs. He was all over the field making tackles, open field tackles. He played great for the Jags.
Yeah, yeah. Still, Colts interconference game on the road, week one, no camp. Um, a lot of variables, a lot of unpredictability, and that's what we got. It's too bad. It's too bad with the season we had, and we'll talk about this more in some of these other games. It's too bad to have a conference game in game one in the preseason that these guys have had. It's really not fair to anybody in the conference, in my opinion, but it is what it is. So, um, okay, let's move on. As much as I hate to say it, the Cowboys too, right? On the road, new coach, disrupted camp, no preseason. They're still competitive, right? They made some mistakes. No preseason. I don't think people understand. You can't simulate. You can't even simulate a regular season game in preseason, let alone in practice. I mean, we're talking. There's such a huge difference there. So I don't. I know. I mean, they were competitive enough in the game that the Cowboys today are blaming a bad call. You can't blame the bad call. The call didn't lose the game. The call didn't help, but the call didn't lose the game. There were miscues and mistakes, but it's early. All right. I don't jump on the Cowboy bandwagon. We like to bust their chops too. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see what McCarthy can do out of Dallas. And Dallas fans don't need to get down. I'm sure they're taking a lot of shit, just like Colts fans are. We all are this week. But this isn't the end of the Cowboys season.
No, I, coming out of this game, I'm a lot more worried about the Cowboys than I was going into it. I still think this team has a lot of opportunity to be explosive. Zeke looked amazing last night. The passing game was not really, couldn't find the rhythm, couldn't really get going. But they're down to two tackles, and so they're going to have to bring guys up off the practice squad. Another interior lineman got hurt, so they have some offensive line issues that might be a problem. When they face a team like Washington, Washington gave the Eagles all they could handle yesterday. And, because that Washington defensive front was so dominant, they got 8 sacks. When the Cowboys play other dominant defensive fronts, if they get manhandled, that's going to be an issue for them. But I do think that it's another one of those, odd off season. Just needs some more time to get acquainted with the new system. Obviously, Mike McCarthy's there instead of Jason Garrett. So we'll see. Leighton Vander Esch broke his collarbone, so he's out for them again. That's going to hurt their defense a lot. But but I do still expect them to win that division. I was actually pretty impressed with the Rams. Jared Goff, could have had a better completion percentage, but he was able to move the ball down the field. He did turn the ball over, but they were effective running the ball, and they used the backs that they had. The rookie had 14 carries in this game, and he did good, but they really leaned on their veteran Malcolm Brown, and it wasn't the flashy Rams that we had a few years ago, but they were able to open in their new stadium, and they got the job done.
Do you think it's a sign? Do you think they'll be a contender in the West?
Um, I don't know. After what you saw with the Cardinals and 49ers, both those teams had flaws. So there's definitely, it looks like competition for the two. I think the Seahawks made a strong case why they could be the one seed in that division. But that division looks like it's going to be more competitive than we originally thought.
Yeah, you're going to make me agree with you on the Seahawks, and I don't want to. But that was a pretty. I mean, for all this week one excuses we're giving for everybody, the Seahawks surely didn't. They sure didn't need that week one excuse. Um, they did look tough. And as far as the 49ers and the Cardinals, I still can't buy into the Cardinals yet. But it's enough to make me backpedal and think maybe I missed something here. D Hop had a great game. I know that Shanahan's under some fire this morning for some suspect play calling. It, the thing about a coaching and play calling is that it's only suspect if it doesn't work, because if it works, you're a genius. And we're still, again, in week one, trying to work out some kinks. But I expected more out of the 49ers yesterday, to be more like the Saints and the Chiefs, to be more on the same page than they were. So, again, it's early. It's not the end of the season, but I agree with you. There may be some shakeup in the West that I didn't anticipate.
Yeah, not hopefully it's not a recurring theme for the 49ers this year, but they started the year without their number one receiver, Debo Samuel. They had to put him on IR, so he's out for the first 3 weeks. They have some offensive line injuries. And then I believe it was early in the second quarter, George Kittle got hurt and he left the game, which, I mean, he was at that point basically the number one receiver for them. So when he goes out of the game, you lose your two top weapons. So Raheem Mostert showed his explosiveness again. He had a huge touchdown for them and really kept them in the game. That was really, I mean, the only thing keeping them in the game at that point. George Kittle came back at that point, or came back in the game in the second half, but wasn't effective. I don't think he had any catches. If it's a lower leg injury, it'll affect his run blocking, which kind of messes with the whole scheme and what Shanahan's trying to do. So hopefully, like I said, it's not a recurring thing. Hopefully, Debo can come back and be effective. Hopefully, this thing with Kittle clears up and he's good. They can get their pieces back and they can be the 49ers we all want to see.
Or at the very least, it's gonna bring more parity than the West than we thought. That all the teams are going to be good, uh, decent, and if all the teams are decent and the Seahawks continue to play like they did yesterday, I think we have a clear answer there. Who's going to win the division? Again, it's a long season, so. Um, all right, let's shift gears again. Uh, let's just touch on the Bills and the Jets. There isn't anything there we didn't expect. I'm surprised that it was as close as it was. I think that's we watched we watched a little bit of the game yesterday. We've seen some highlights. I would imagine it appeared that Buffalo was completely controlling the game, so it probably wasn't near as close as as the score showed. No surprise there.
Yeah, yeah, and actually the Bills, I mean, they dominated. If you look at the score sheets, the Bills dominated in time of possession. They had more than double the amount of first downs, nearly double the amount of yards. The only reason that it wasn't more is because Josh Allen is still having fumbling issues when he's taking off. He's not just getting down or getting out of bounds. He's trying to make more, which is cool. He wants to be a playmaker, but he's got to stop costing them turnovers. If they were playing a better team, like, I mean, you saw in the Colts game, Colts dominated every facet of that game, two turnovers, and they lost the game because, so if the Bills play a good team and have two or three turnovers, they lose that game, which, get into the playoffs just like last year when they played the Texans in the playoffs. If he gets back to that stage and keeps turning the ball over, they're not going to go anywhere. We're going to be having the same conversation about Josh Allen again next year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, all right, here's one I didn't expect: the Eagles and the Washington football team. Are the Eagles? Did the Eagles just collapse? Is Ron Rivera had more of an impact than we thought he would with Washington? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I don't know if it was so much of an ego collapse. I do think that Ron Rivera being in Washington has an effect. That the defense, they've drafted heavy defense in the early rounds the last couple of years, and those guys are doing really well for that defense. But if there's one team that I'm willing to say, give all the excuses to about injuries, it's the Eagles. Because last year their season got derailed by injury, and they still almost made the playoffs. And they have so many injuries already coming into the year, which is frustrating because Carson Wentz is perfectly healthy. So it's like,
Yeah,
it'd be great for him to have his weapons back now. So I hope they get their weapons back. Their offensive line is really beat up. Two guys already out for the year. They brought in Jason Peters on a 1-year contract to fill a void they had at guard. And then their tackle got hurt, so he's back at tackle. They have to bring somebody in at guard. They're really beat up already. So hopefully they can figure it out. Doug Peterson seems to be pretty good with that group over the last couple of years with as beat up as they've been. So hopefully they can do it again. Hopefully Carson Wentz can shine. But I think that game really was just more what the Eagles didn't have than what Washington brought to the table.
Yeah. And again, another conference game to start the season out. Tough luck, but it is what it is. So another one that the Browns and the Ravens, we expected that to happen. Again, it was 38-6. I'm surprised it wasn't 58-6. The Browns being the Browns and making some terrible mistakes. So Ravens, no shock there. Obviously, one of the top two teams in the AFC, if not in the entire league.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we expected the Ravens to dominate. When I heard that the Browns had their top two corners not in the game, plus all this, like we've mentioned before, the weird off season, and they have a new head coach again. So it was just spelled disaster for the Browns coming into this game playing the Ravens.
Yeah, just a preseason game for the Ravens, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about the Packers and Vikings. I'm big on the Vikings. I like what's going on up in Minnesota. The Packers are the Packers. Aaron Rodgers did his thing yesterday for sure.
Yeah.
But I think there's a whole lot going on in this game. There's a whole lot going on in this game. All right, so when we look at the Vikings and we're talking about the limited camp, no preseason, the Vikings, they brought Gary Kubiak in, so you got a coaching change, you got some personnel changes. You're still trying to gel everything together. The Vikings aren't established. We can't say they're not like the Packers, they're not like the Chiefs, they're not like the Ravens. They're still trying to pull all this stuff together. Kirk Cousins showed some signs of brilliance yesterday. They still put up 34 points against the Packers.
Yeah, against a very stout Packers defense.
Yeah. So this is one of these that it looks like. I mean, you can interpret this how you want. It looks like the Packers. The Packers put up 43 points. That's no. I mean that is what it is. I think this is a sign of. I think these are the two conference champions here. I think that this is going to be a battle on down over 16 games. I think the Vikings are for real, and the Texans probably have to look out in week 3, 4.
Yeah. The Vikings, they have some things to shore up on that defense. Obviously, that secondary coming into the season, we all kind of knew it was going to be a problem because they let their top two guys go and brought in new guys. But they really got exposed yesterday. They're going to have to find ways to tighten that up. But in terms of both those offenses, if you look at the stat sheet, the offensive efficiency was pretty similar. There were just a couple things that stood out to me. Was the time of possession was in the Packers' favor. They had the ball for 41 minutes and 46 seconds, which is, almost 3/4 of the game. And also the difference in yards. Obviously, you keep the ball more, you're going to have yards. But they outgained them by 140 yards. So the continuity. Even though we talked about Aaron Rodgers not having the weapons, it's only Devontae Adams. The continuity that he has with the guys that were there last year, Marcus Valdes-Scantling finally stepped up. He had a prominent role yesterday as their number 2 receiver. And Allen Lazard, obviously Aaron Rodgers threw the ball like 46 times, so guys are going to get a bunch of catches and yards. But Allen Lazard looked good too. He comes out of the slot and he was making plays for him. And they could do whatever they wanted yesterday. Aaron Rodgers looked like the old Aaron Rodgers. He slinged it for 4 touchdowns, and hopefully that's going forward
against a very young and inexperienced defensive backfield.
Yeah, very.
That wasn't by mistake. Rodgers knew what he was doing. That it's only logical. He came after the young guys, and he got done what he needed to get done. week 16, those guys aren't inexperienced anymore. It's a whole different ball game. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I mean, it's just Rodgers had an amazing game, and Rodgers is always going to have a good game, but it was against a bunch of young kids who the best way to learn is get your ass burned, and that's what happened to him yesterday.
Yep. Yeah. Which was, I mean, like you said, the smart thing to do. Probably should have expected that. But they, with their having Aaron Jones, he eats. He always eats when he gets the ball. But they also have Jamal Williams. They drafted AJ Dillon, and so I expected them to run the ball more. They were more run first last year, but it was nice to see Aaron go out there and take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think both these teams are playoff teams, playoff potential. Both teams have the capability to win this division, and they're both teams to watch. I know people are discounting the Vikings. I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I think Mike Zimmer is a really good defensive coach, so I expect as the season goes on, that Vikings defense, those young guys will figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so who you want to talk about next? Do we want to talk about this Bears Lions game, or do you just want to laugh and keep moving on that?
Oh yeah, that one's tough. Not a whole lot of flash comes with that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Trubisky,
Same with the
Trubisky
Chargers
looked
and
good though.
Bengals. What? Do what?
Trubisky did look good though. For anything anybody wants to say about him, he looked good yesterday.
Yeah, against a 2-win team.
Yep, that's the issue there.
I mean, they're all professionals. Everybody's good in the league, or they wouldn't be in the league. But I don't. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Chargers, Bengals, same way. Not much there excites me. You may have a different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe Burrow showed a little flash in his debut, but he's going to have to tighten it up and figure out how to make these NFL throws. He can afford to be a little more accurate. But he also, that defense for the Chargers, they don't have slouches over there either. They have a couple All Pro guys and Pro Bowlers over there. But yeah, again, not a whole lot to talk about this game. It seemed like more of a defensive affair, or neither team could really get going on offense. But I don't think anybody expected either team to have much going on offense.
Yeah. And on the flip side, the Raiders and the Panthers, both teams put up 30 points.
Yeah, which I thought, going into this, I thought was entirely possible. Not a whole lot to expect out of either of those defenses, but they both have a lot of offensive components. So both those teams are probably going to be in a lot more games like that this year.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Dolphins. I have hyped the Dolphins up all year long. I was disappointed with what happened yesterday, but when we unpack it, we start with conference game on the road, weird preseason. As we've done the entire episode. You're still going into New England. You're still playing against a Bill Belichick defense. Fitzpatrick's still throwing interceptions. It comes with the guy. He's come with it. But he's playing against a Belichick defense, and on the other side of the ball with the Patriots, Cam had a good game, and I am really happy for Cam. Really happy for Cam. I hope that he's found a home for his sake. I mean, he's athletic, he's talented, he deserves to play in the league. I hope he's found a home there. But we also have to be honest. The Dolphins could not have prepared for a Cam-led Patriots offense because it didn't exist until yesterday. There's no film, and so game film will fix some of that as the season goes on. Teams will tighten down on that. When the Dolphins play the Patriots later in the season, that should be less of a factor. Not saying that Cam won't be Cam and he still won't play well and put up good numbers. It just won't be the dominating factor like it was yesterday. So again, before I let you say something, beginning of the season, conference game on the road in 2020, I don't think this is – I think it's too early to bail on the Dolphins.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at what happened, and you look at the score sheet. They didn't get obliterated in this game. You know, the defense that we think should be stout, they kept it as close as they could. But, you know, when your quarterback's throwing 3 interceptions and, you know, they keep giving Cam Newton the ball back, it's not going to do well for your team.
That's right.
If they can fix those errors as they go and minimize those, they should be fine. You know, Cam and the Patriots, like you said, as people get more film on what this offense is going to look like, I'm worried about it because you know they only threw the ball 19 times, but Cam ran the ball 15 times, and I mean he had 75 yards on his own. The next two best runners on the team combined for 17 carries and 69 yards. So, you know, when you're only getting 155 from your quarterback passing, and he's your main running back as the year goes on, that's not going to be good. I worry about his health. Obviously, he's had the health issues that doesn't need to be talked about, but his like I said, it just worries me. I'm a huge Cam fan, so in my mind, I'm like, no, just do something else. Just pass the ball more. Don't run. But I hope it works out, like you said. But I do hope he's not found a new home because we have Philip Rivers on a 1-year contract in Indianapolis, and Cam is on a 1-year contract. So you just come on over to Indy next year and find a home in Indy.
Yeah. Since we didn't, well, especially since we didn't get Rosen.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the Colts attempted to do that. Good for the Bucks, which brings us to the Bucks and the Saints. Amazing game. I don't want to say. I mean, there's two arguments there. I was going to say it didn't disappoint. At some level, it disappointed. I expected it to be a little closer, but again, we got to go over the Bucks. New quarterback, new tight end, new running back. I mean, the whole thing is, and no preseason, no camp, no. You can't put all these guys together. And I mean, Fournette just got there. You know, the Saints, like the Chiefs and the Ravens, they didn't need a preseason. I mean, they looked good. They're well oiled. They look like the Saints of last year. They look like they're a Super Bowl contender again this year. The fact that the Bucks were competitive all games speaks volume for what's going on in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, Brady made some mistakes. You know, I'd like to rag on him. You know,
I know you
um, but you know, he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't his old goat material. He had 2 picks, a QBR 34.6. But we're also talking about a Saints defense that just keeps getting better every year. Marshawn Lattimore is Mike Evans' kryptonite. I don't know why, but Mike Evans cannot produce against Marshawn Lattimore. And it happened again last night. He caught a touchdown late when the game was kind of out of reach at that point. Mike Evans got a touchdown.
Was that his first reception? I mean, he didn't get his first reception until real late in the game too.
Yeah, I don't know if that was his first reception, but he maybe had one or two before that.
Yeah.
Marshawn locks him up every time they play, so that's a problem. But Chris Godwin looked good, but Brady seemed to have a real good connection with Scott Miller, somebody to look out for on that team. He kind of played that Julian Edelman role when you needed him to get the first down. That was the guy he was going to. So that seems to be one of Brady's go-to guys there. So again, plethora of weapons, nothing we didn't know about there. The thing with Fournette is interesting though, because you didn't really expect him to play a whole lot in that game, but Ronald Jones looked really good. Like all the hype that Bruce Arians has been talking about with this guy, he produced and looked good, but they got in a situation where they had to pass more, so they couldn't lean on that run game anymore. So going forward, I think the Bucks are in a good position. They have to fix that defense a little bit, but that defense didn't look terrible either. They were getting pressure on Drew Brees. They just got to shore up that secondary a little bit, and they're going to be competitive in every game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think for all these other teams that we have made these excuses for, I think the Bucks are the least of the teams that we need to make excuses for, because everything we saw is to be expected at some point, and they will certainly fine tune that as they move along in the season.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, if you look at the coaching staff plus the team that's around it. I mean, they're probably the most veteran team in the league right
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So, all right, let's talk about our pigskin pick'em. So for this week, we've got a guest in the league, Ricky Entry. He successfully picked 11. He's the leader. And between the three of us, Zach is leading with 9 successful picks. You and I tied with 8. Uh, Unfortunately, I changed the Cardinals. I had chosen the Cardinals, and I changed it to the 49ers 10 minutes before kickoff. So that'll learn you, right? Um, so the last thing I want to say is I want to talk about what happened with Frank Reich yesterday. For those of you who aren't up to speed, Frank Reich, the culture on the sideline for the national anthem yesterday, the entire organization locked arms and stood for the national anthem. Frank Reich stepped out in front of that line and took a knee. And I've seen a lot of opinions about this, but this morning, as I'm sure we can all expect, but this is what I love about this guy. And you don't think Frank Reich knew what the ramifications were? He knew exactly what he was doing. He stepped up and he took a bullet for his players. He knelt so they didn't have to. He knew that if any of the players knelt, there would be a target on their back. We've seen that with Kaepernick. What's happened to Kaepernick has been absolutely ridiculous, being barred from the league. And he knew that his players have a target on their back. But he knew if he did it, there would be less of a reaction. I don't really want to get into why. I think we know why. It would cause an argument. Some people would disagree with that. I want to emphasize that this was a win-win. He knew his players were hurting. He knew it can't be ignored. Something had to be done. There's really not a way out of the situation. And he saw his players hurting. He stepped in. If you don't think his players understand the depth of what he did for them yesterday, and that they won't in turn repay him with work ethic and loyalty, then you don't understand sports and leadership. He has assembled a hell of a football team, and now he just pulled the entire locker room together. And I'm here to tell you, this is leadership, and this is what you want right here.
Yep, absolutely. I watched the post-game press conference for Darius Leonard, and they asked him about that, and he basically echoed that same thing. To have they want they want the higher ups to hear what they're saying. So to them, it was like, okay, he's our leader. So if maybe they'll listen to him instead of listening to us, he's our guy. He'll speak for us. And to go out on a limb and to do that is both powerful in and outside that locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And many people are confused. Many people think that leadership is telling them to shut the hell up. That is not leadership. That's control. There's a huge difference between leadership and control. Control, if you have control, Bill Belichick is the best at control there's ever been. Bill Belichick controls every single aspect, everything that goes on inside that locker room. He has complete control of it. That's rare that happens and you have that kind of success with that. So I can't imagine how overbearing he is. I mean, I can. We all know it. But I mean, that's for him to sustain that at that level is incredible. That's why other guys don't do it. On the other hand, it's usually not effective. On the other hand is leadership. Leadership are your guys knowing that you would do anything. You're asking them to do something for you, and they know you would do anything for them. That the relationship is reciprocal. I have a job to do, you have a job to do, and I'm going to have your back. Just because I'm in charge, I'm not going to turn your back. And the fact that he didn't turn around and tell him to shut the hell up or stay in the locker room, and I don't want to bash anybody staying in the locker room. Avoiding controversy is a temporary solution to this problem. I don't want to bash that. I'm just saying the guy's got balls. He's got leadership potential. This is why we're so hyped on him. And this is the guy I'm telling you, I think before this is all said and done, he may be the best coach in this franchise history.
Absolutely. And just as a fan, if I know that I would go to war for that man, I know those guys are ready to come out and fight every Sunday and go to war for that dude.
That's right. Absolutely. So I'm excited to see what next week brings. Speaking of next week, we have a couple more episodes on tap for you this week. Today was a preview or the recap for the yesterday's games. Obviously, we didn't include tonight's game, so we will include those in the next week preview that's coming up. And you and Zach will have a fantasy episode where you go through the fantasy stats for this week and what to look forward to for next week.
Yeah, we're going to go over all the new waiver wire pickups. We're going to go over who had a big impact, what we saw from week one, and what we took from it, and see who you should start this week.
Good deal. So be sure to tune in to next couple episodes. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe this one. Tell all your friends. We'd love to have you on board. And we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.